Well, thanks very much. For those of you not familiar with SSF, we are a contract manufacturer of silicone components for medical devices. We have 3 facilities, 2 are in California, and 1 is in Elk Rapids, Michigan. Back in January of 2009, I moved from our sales department and became the operations manager at the Elk Rapids plant. And this is a pretty small facility, a total of 30 people. And we have just a few different processes there and just a few customers. When I went into the plant in 2009, I was taking over for Dave Carson, and some of you may know him. He's pretty active here in the lean community. Dave was there for a 2-year rotation and was coming back to Paso Robles. So when I had gone in there, I was taking over a plant, and if you kind of think about this, northern Michigan, it's an automotive state, it's a union state, it's a very top-down command and control sort of environment there. So I took over from Dave, and Dave was trying to take that kind of a culture, and he was starting the lean transformation. He got us into 5S. People are doing very, very well with it. He started one-piece flow, and at this plant we make surgical electrodes. So we take a piece of stainless steel and we dip it into silicone, and we do that tens of thousands of times a day. And then we do hand assembly of these things. So we were processing tens of thousands of parts by hand in big batches every day, and we were having huge quality issues with this that were related to batch processing. Dave did a great job of going to one-piece flow. The hard thing about that was, with this culture, this very top-down command and control culture, people had the attitude that I'm going to do what I'm told to do, and I'm told to put this part together all day, every day. You want me to do one at a time, fine, but you're not telling me to think about it. You're not telling me to improve anything. I just put these parts together, and that was the culture that we were fighting with. So I wanted to continue on the lean journey, and I wanted people to take continuous improvement on their own, and I would share a lean tool, and I was really focused on the lean tools, and I wanted people to learn it, apply it, and continue to apply, really sustain it, and I was having an incredibly difficult time with that. And what I found was, the reality is culture trumps everything. I would tell people to do something, they would go out on the floor and they would do it for as long as I watched them do it, and when I walked away, right back to batch processing, right back to the old ways because they were simple, and that's what people knew. So I discovered that command and control kills continuous improvement. By having to tell people to improve something, we're removing the key component, which is thinking. If people are conditioned to do what they're told, and they're told to improve something, they will only improve the very limited portion that the boss sees and tells them to improve. The reality is we want to get the improvements to come from the floor, because as a manager, I've got a background in philosophy. I don't know anything about making these parts. I really don't know manufacturing like the people on the manufacturing floor do. They're the experts, and I can't begin to tell them how to make things better. They have to bring the ideas forward. So we had this very top-down command and control sort of culture. Our lean efforts weren't being sustained, and people were refusing responsibility, to the point that we'd have a piece of equipment go down. People were told over the years, don't adjust anything, don't fix it, call in an engineer, and an engineer will fix this, which is another way of just saying, you're not smart enough to turn this knob, you're not smart enough to be able to experiment within some limited parameters, so don't touch it. And it got to the point where something would go wrong, and the operators would literally put their hands up, step away, call in an engineer, and say, well, I'll be in the break room, call me when you have it fixed. And they would just disappear. And then it would take time to get them back online, get them up and running. We'd lose a lot of production. Then we would get to the point where how much production did we lose? And the operators, well, I don't know, 2 hours? Well, how will that impact the customer? I don't know. I'm only told to make parts. I'm not told to figure out how many parts to make. I know that my shift starts at 5 in the morning. It's over at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I make parts all day long. That's where I think, because that's what I'm told to do. So I learned that I had to change that way of thinking. And right around that time, one of the supervisors went to AME, and this was 2010, so she went to AME in Baltimore, and she had an opportunity to listen to a man by the name of Larry Davis. He's the president of Damon Products out of Mishawaka, Indiana. She listened to him speak about culture, and his point was that culture trumps everything. And if you're going to be successful, you're going to get it done through your culture and not through the tools. Because the reality is, it's the culture that gets things done. It's the way you do things, and if you have the right culture, you will be successful with any tool. Even if it's not the best tool, you will still be successful. So Nikki got all excited about this. She brought this idea back to me and said, "Steve, we got to change. I found the missing component. We have to do what Damon Corporation does, and we need to let the operators run the business." And I kind of thought about that for a second. Well, here I have operators that won't even sustain a simple lean tool, and we want to shift to having them actually run the business. How is that going to work? Well, I don't know, but Larry Damon invited us down to Mishawaka, and he'll spend the day with us and teach us everything they know. So I kind of resisted the idea, and I fell into that typical lean implementation thing. That's great for Toyota, but it doesn't work here. I was giving exactly those same excuses. Oh, that's great for Damon. I don't see it working here. This isn't realistic. And when I ran out of excuses, Nikki actually planned the trip. So we went down and met with these folks, and it took about 30 minutes of talking to the folks at Damon for the light to come on. I got it. I understand now what is missing. And that was me trying to be the leader, insisting that I was supposed to tell people what to do, how much to build, when to do it. And that was a complete failure on my part. So one of the first lessons that we learned from Damon Corporation was that every single person in the company, regardless of the position, must have mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And there's never an exception to that. Every single person has to be a master of their position. Even if it's a first-day trainee, by the end of the day, they need to master the responsibilities that they've been given for that day. Every single person has to have autonomy. That means they need to have the freedom to do their job, they have to have the freedom to fail, and they have to have support when they do. So we can't expect people to be successful if we bring in the fences or narrow the parameters that they're allowed to work within too tightly. People have to be allowed to use their minds to engage in their work and be acknowledged for what they are. It's really a mind connected to a pair of hands and not just a pair of hands doing the work that they've been told to do. And every single person has to have purpose. Everybody's purpose in the company has to be exactly the same as the purpose of their team and the same as the purpose of the company as a whole. And the purpose is help your customer be successful, help your team be successful, and do the right things for the right reasons. If you're doing those three things, you can make your decisions, and we're going to support you if you fail. If you go outside of those three things and you make some decisions and you fail, we're going to address your decision-making process, and we're going to fix it. Another key point we learned from Damon was everything is part of a process. Every single thing you do at work is part of a process. Clocking in, showing up, the way you communicate with your employees, the way we approach bringing raw materials onto the floor, everything that's covered in a work instruction, every single thing is part of a process. And we can give every employee the autonomy to make business decisions if we are good enough at defining our processes. If they know exactly what the process is, we're error-proofing and we're removing the opportunity for people to make errors, to make mistakes, or to make bad decisions, giving them more confidence and more freedom to make the right decisions without having to ask. What we want to eliminate is anybody going to a supervisor of, should I do this? Can I do this? What would happen if? People on the floor should have the autonomy to make those decisions on their own, but that can't be done if we don't define processes very, very well. Operators own the process. The operators own the production floor. They're in charge of everything from sourcing raw materials, bringing it onto the floor, deciding when to start production, how many parts to produce, when to get it through QC, when to package, how to package, and when to get it out. Nobody asks for that. And what we saw at Damon Products, supervisors were completely removed from all of this. An operator's running a CNC mill and a part breaks. They need to buy a $6,000 piece of equipment to fix it. They have the autonomy to do it, and they don't ask. They gave a really great example of something going wrong in material flow. They had a cart in Mishawaka, the Damon company. They make hydraulic manifolds, very, very heavy, big steel components. And they had operators moving a cart through the production floor, and there was a cable tunnel going across the floor in this new building. Cart couldn't get from point A to point B in the most direct path, so they had to go out and around. Well, the operators got this plan together. They checked it over with the engineers. What do you think how much time would we save? Would it be worthwhile? How much money would it take to get this fixed if we can get rid of this tunnel? And more importantly, would it be worth it? Well, the employees on the floor, they figured that out. They did the math, and they found out that it was going to cost $25,000, but it would save them about $70,000 a year in labor and in time. So they went to the president and said, hey, we think we can save you $70,000 a year if you give us $25,000 up front. The president asked, how? That's not important. We just need the money. The president said, fine, I'll trust you, and gave him the budget of $25,000. A few days later, concrete saw is tearing up the production floor in their brand new building, a building that these employees don't own. The president went out, realized I shouldn't even ask, and turned around and walked away. He let him finish the project, and he came back and said, tell me what you did. He showed him the result. Everything was fine. They did the right things for the right reasons. They helped the customer be more successful. They helped their team be more successful, and they saved the company money. This probably would not have happened in a may I please sort of top-down culture. The operators have to own everything from raw materials to finished goods. Another key component is everybody is part of a team. Every single employee is part of some team somewhere. Nobody stands alone. The receptionist is part of a team. Janitorial is part of a team. Production is part of a team. And there can never be an exception to that. One of the reasons is accountability. People tend to be more accountable to their teammates than they are to their supervisor, because a supervisor is often seen as an enforcer, and enforcers set limits, and people tend, it's kind of human nature, we tend to push the limit. We've all seen speed limit signs on a highway, and we've all gone faster than the speed limit, but below what we think we're going to get in trouble for. That's part of human nature. But if we're doing something on a team that's disrupting the team, well, we don't need the signs. We see right away where those limits are. Where we know if the supervisor's not on the floor, I have broader limits, right? Because the supervisor can't see me. But if I'm accountable to the team instead of the supervisor, I tend to be more consistent and perform in a more consistent manner and ultimately support the team better. So supervision is removed from the supervisor's role. Sounds kind of strange. The way Damon put it was, we took the babysitting out of supervision. Everybody is responsible for following the rules on their own. Everybody is a professional. Everybody has the same professional responsibility as the president of the company. The president follows the rules. Everybody follows the rules. And you are expected to enforce those rules for yourself. So getting to work late, well, you have a rule you need to be here on time. If you can't do that, you have trouble supervising yourself. We're going to address that issue. But it's your responsibility. It's not up to the supervisor to catch you. It's up to you to catch yourself.
Does that mean you remove the supervisor?
No. That's a great question. And when I gave this speech at SSF, the supervisors all got worried, like there was going to be some sort of trouble or major change to their position. But give me just a minute. I'm going to get to that. Another concept is that people are trusted. We trust people to follow the rules. We trust them to do the right things for the right reasons. And because our processes are so well defined and our training is so well defined, people know where their limits are, and they know when they should ask for help and when they should be doing things on their own. People tend to perform the way they're treated. And the idea is, if you tell everybody they're professionals and you treat them right like professionals, you give them the respect, the same respect that you would give managers and executives, they tend to perform to that level of professionalism. On the other hand, if you treat people like they're not capable, if you tell them what to do, how to do it, where to do it on a daily basis, they will tend to perform that way. I will do only what you tell me to do, and nothing more. I won't put in any more effort. And something I learned from my father many, many years ago is, you pay me enough to be here, you don't pay me enough to care. that's exactly what you'll get. But you will change that if people are treated as professionals and trusted. When we learned all this from Damon Corporation, we had my leadership team and I, we were all in one car, and it was a 5-hour drive back to Michigan. We learned all these things, got all excited about it, and yes, this is the missing link, and this is what's going to make everything better for us. Had real pie-in-the-sky ideas of how great this was going to be. So we started to put together a plan. We're going to do this tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to go into the plant, we're going to introduce this idea, we're going to show people the vision, and we're going to just start, and everybody's going to love it, and it's going to be fantastic. So reality set in. We realized that implementing something like this can be so complicated. There are so many variables that you really can't have a detailed plan. We've got to have just general ideas of what these concepts mean, and the leadership has to be in lockstep, and we've got to support it, and we have to support each other. And when somebody fails, we've got to be there to support them. And it's kind of like teaching a child to ride a bicycle. I don't know if you've ever done that. I never have, but I've been the child on the bicycle. And there's something about taking the training wheels off and holding the seat, and sooner or later, you got to let that seat go, and you know what's going to happen. The kid's going to wipe out. It's inevitable. So all you can do is, well, don't point the kid into traffic. Right? Go to someplace safe. Grass is a great idea. Create a safe environment, and when they do crash, you're right there to help, and they can help them understand why, help them get back on, and try it again. And that's what we have to do as leaders. So we came back to our plant. We had our all-employee meeting the day we got back, and we talked about the culture, top down. Nobody likes working in this environment, and we see it on your faces. We see it in your performance. And how do you feel when you come in the morning and there's a production board and your name is set to a position somewhere in the plant? You're going to do this today. Does that make you feel like a professional? Does it make you feel like an adult? Do you like having that happen? Somebody else is making this decision for you. And no, people don't like doing that. And do you like being told how many parts? No, I know what to do. I know how to do it better than the planner does. I know how to do this better than the supervisor does. And it's kind of insulting that someone's telling me how to do this. So we said, okay, so starting tomorrow morning, you're going to run the plant. As the manager, I'm not going to run it for you. I'm not going to make your decisions for you. I'm not going to tell you what to make. I'm going to show you where the orders are, where they can be found. I'm going to show you how to source the raw materials. I'm going to show you how to kit the raw materials, bring everything in. You already know how to make it. You know how to ship it. And you are going to run the entire plant. We're not going to do this anymore. And when you have a question, I promise you, I will not answer your questions for you. Instead, I'm going to ask you questions in return, and I'm going to lead you to the information you need. I'm going to teach you how to run the business, how to make your own decisions, because what you're looking for now is when any kind of risk comes up, you want to go to an authority figure to take that risk away. If you ask me, now it's my fault if it goes wrong. It's not going to happen anymore. You're going to run it, and you're going to be successful, and I'm going to show you how. First thing we're going to do is assign everybody to a team. Every single person in the plant is on a team. We shared with them the list, and we gave every team an assignment and a budget. You have 30 days. In 30 days, we're going to have an all-employee meeting, and at this meeting, each team is going to report out on this assignment. And your assignment is to take $10 out of petty cash per person, go off-site. You cannot have this meeting on our property. And you're going to develop ground rules. You're going to decide amongst yourselves how you're going to operate as a team. How are you going to communicate with each other? How are you going to support each other? What kind of issues do you have? Make rules that will address those. And if it has to be things like get back from break on time, make that one of your ground rules, and your ground rules are up to you. Second rule, no supervisor can be involved in your off-site meeting. It's going to be all the employees, leadership stays away. It's totally up to you. And the third rule was every single employee is going to come back with something new learned about everybody else in the team. You're going to learn a new fact, something you didn't know before. And when we have our all-employee meeting, you're going to report out on what that is. So a month later, everybody went out and did it. Nobody had to be told when they could shut down production, what to do with that lost time from production. And they weren't told where to go. But everybody figured it out. They got it done, and we refused to give them direction, and we just forced them to figure it out. Now, when everybody got back, we found that some people went to a local sandwich shop and had their meeting there because they could do that for $10 a head. One team was pretty clever. They went to a miniature golf place, and they played golf with their $10 a head. But they did what they were supposed to do. They came back with their ground rules. They had a great time doing it, a great team building event, and they came back with their ground rules, and then they posted them up in their workplace, and they often referred back to us. Hey, remember, you are supposed to be back from break on time. That's an issue for you. And they just point to the ground rules because those rules have a sense of authority that was in the past the supervisor, but now they didn't need from a supervisor. So the next thing was we required the teams to run the business. Now the deal with that, and this is where we get to supervision, right? What do the supervisors do now? Well, the supervisor has to get everything done with the supervisor's hands in the supervisor's pockets. So I told the supervisors, you cannot take your hands out of your pockets, figuratively, of course. You can't touch product, you can't touch orders, you can't touch a computer keyboard. You teach. Your job is to teach people how to do this, and you're going to encourage them to do this. So people come in first thing in the morning. Normally they look at the board to see where they're assigned. There's no assignment. Now what do we do? I don't know. What will you do? And people would scratch their head, be a little bit of bickering and arguing. I want to do this. Well, can I go to this job? And they'd look to me. You can do whatever you want. The decision is yours. You're a professional, you're an adult, and you decide where you're going to work, and you can do anything you want in the plant. It's totally up to you. And that created like 3 weeks of chaos. And it was chaos, well worth it in my mind. I get a lot of flack from HR still on this, but it was well worth it because of the transition we were making from this union top-down culture. We're not a union shop, but everybody had worked in a union shop. Getting from that to this culture of people on the floor are running the business, that's a big transition. So we had a couple of people decide, I don't want to work on the manufacturing floor today. I want to go to the warehouse. I like running that auto scrubber machine, polishing the floor. So the floor's perfectly clean. It doesn't need to be polished, but polishing it anyway. Okay. And somebody wanted to go build boxes. So we'd go out and talk to those folks. So what are you doing? Well, I'm building boxes. Well, why? Because I can do whatever I want. Well, yes, you can. Are you helping the customer be successful? Well, no. Okay. Are you helping your team be successful? Do they need you out here? No. And that's how we started with the decision-making process. So we had 3 weeks of this, I can do whatever I want, which is true, but there are consequences to doing what you want, to coming around to really following the 3 rules. Help the customer be successful, help your team be successful, do the right things for the right reasons, and you're making good decisions. After about 3 weeks of that, people really got on board, and things started to settle down. Now with the supervisor's job is to teach, coach, mentor, and inspire. We don't tell people what to do. We don't tell people how to do it. We have processes for that. We have training programs for that. And the supervisors are there to really motivate people, to really inspire people. And we had to take that top-down out of leadership. So this is a complete shift in the way we look at leadership. But one thing we had to be very careful about, we're an ISO company, we're a medical device governed by FDA. You can't change anything in medical device. You can't change a process without going through validations, and I'm sure you know plenty about that. It's a long road to hoe. So we had to make sure people knew where the limits were. You can change the way we approach people, we can change our leadership, but we're not going to change policy, and we're not changing any documented or ISO sort of work instruction or procedure. So the big shift in all of this isn't with the employees. The employees don't have any problem with running the plant. They already know how to do that. The shift is getting the supervisors to go from knocking people down to building people up. That was very, very tough. People had to be given the freedom to be successful. And again, the bicycle thing, they had to be given the freedom to crash. And there were times when we saw errors are going to happen. We see it. We're on the way to doing this. And we would just, as leaders, we would kind of look at our risks. Are we going to impact the customer? Is this going to be costly? Is it going to do something to our raw material? Will it do anything to delivery? And if we thought, no, it's not going to be that bad, then we would stand back and let people fail. And by failing, people learned. So we came to understand and we came to teach that any tool will be successful with the right culture. Generally speaking, people are trustworthy and want to do a good job. Now, when we made this transition, this is true. And we found some people who, though, did not have the professionalism to meet these new standards. They weren't capable of doing the right things for the right reasons all the time, helping the customer be successful and focusing on helping their teams be successful. And they ended up going out to the warehouse and building boxes when they shouldn't. And you try to coach those people along, and eventually those people just aren't going to be with the company any longer. It's about setting a professional standard, encouraging people to live up to those standards, helping them along the way. But when they refuse, they've got to change. I think it was Taiichi Ono who said, people must change or people must change. So change the way you do it, or we're going to have to change the people who are working here. There's a saying that you hire for skill and you fire for attitude. So just switch that around, hire people for attitude and give them the skills they need. At SSF in our Michigan plant, we've been doing this for a couple of years now. When we interview people, we take four candidates at a time, put them in a conference room with parts of Lego cars. We have kits, 25 Lego kits, all disassembled. Put them on a table, and we say, you can use anything in this room. You're to build an assembly line. You're to build 25 cars. When you start building the cars, start a stopwatch. When you finish, you'll stop the stopwatch. And we want to see an improvement, one round of that to the next round. We're going to give you an opportunity to improve your processes, break everything down, start and do it again. And we have them go through this exercise. We don't care about how fast those cars are being put together. We want to know how people work together. We want to know how people interact as a team. Are they helpful? Do they collaborate? Will they try to improve anything? We can't figure that out from an interview because the reality is so many people who apply for manufacturing positions know nothing about interviewing. They've never been trained to do it. They don't know how to sell their skills. And we found by doing this, watching this exercise and going straight into an interview, people say things, well, you should hire me because, well, I'm a team player. And well, no, actually, what we saw a few minutes ago, you didn't help anybody out with anything. And I have a really positive attitude. Well, I remember you criticized your teammates. So we find out a lot more about people by seeing them actually work. So now we're moving that build the cars thing throughout the company because it teaches us so much more. But we're hiring for attitude, and then we teach people how to process silicone components. Employees are responsible for their own success. When they come to work for us, they're given a training sheet. We list out all the things, the skills they need for the first 90 days. We introduce them to the people who will help them. We assign them a mentor, and we make it their responsibility. You will get this done in 90 days. You will communicate with your team to make sure this gets finished. But nobody's going to tell you to do it. No one's going to tell you when to do it. It's up to you. And everybody in the company is responsible for protecting the process. Again, it's about defining the processes very, very well. And once you have that, your job is not just to make the widgets. Your job is to protect the process. And lastly, help the customer be successful. Maybe you heard this before. Help the team be successful. Do the right things for the right reasons. If everybody's making those decisions or following these rules, you're making the right decisions and you're moving in the right direction. I think my time is up. Thank you very much.